Welcome back to the channel, everybody. I'm Dino. Over the last few episodes, we've really been focusing on my 3D printed dash for the DR650. And I have to say, I've been test riding it for the last couple weeks and I am really impressed with it. I think I'm really close to releasing these files so that you can start playing with it and modifying it the way that you want to. However, today is a little bit wet out there, so I don't really want to go for a ride. I mean, it's the end of May right now in Niagara Falls, and it's 12 degrees and rainy out there. It's just not a nice day to ride. So instead, I thought we would do an installation video on a product that was donated to the channel. And that product is the Carpuride 702 Pro that is an interface between your phone, the device, and if you have one, a smart helmet. So why don't you sit back, grab yourself something warm to drink, and enjoy Dino's Tinker Shed. Can't wait to unbox this. I haven't even opened it yet. I'll see you in a minute. So what exactly is the Carpuride 702 Pro and why would somebody want one and how did I end up with one? Well, those are a lot of questions and I'm going to answer those for you before we get into the installation. So the 702 Pro is an interface device that works with your smartphone and a smart helmet if you have one to allow you access to Apple CarPlay or Android Auto or things like Gaia. Anything that's on your smartphone, this will interface with a 7-inch touch-sensitive screen and allow you to use it in tandem or in companionship with a smart helmet. For me, it is going to do two things. The first one is it's going to replace my current sort of guidance system, which traditionally has been something like a Garmin Nuvi, or when the Garmin Nuvi finally failed, I stepped to a Garmin Montana 680, I think is what this one is. Now, I actually liked the Nuvi a lot. It was very bright. It gave me turn-by-turn directions. However, it was not waterproof at all and eventually succumbed to the elements from snowmobiling and motorcycle riding. Eventually, this thing finally gave up the ghost and stopped working. The other thing about it is, unless I was sort of traveling fairly slow, the turn-by-turn directions on the map software really weren't recognizable within the helmet due to wind noise or motor sounds or whatever. Basically, it was a visual-only guidance system. When I updated to the Garmin 680, it had a few advantages, the most of which was it was waterproof. It could handle the elements, the rain, the snow, all that kind of stuff. It had a nice proprietary mount that you could snap in and out to take off the motorcycle and didn't have to deal with USB cables and things like that. It was a nice little device. However, what I found out really quickly is the way it comes from the factory anyway is it's really designed for backcountry navigation where you're doing your own mapping, that kind of stuff. So when I was on the street, it really did not have turn-by-turn direction. So if I was going to a different city or trying to navigate my way around, say, Toronto or Hamilton, Ontario, this really didn't help me at all. And the screen was relatively small and not very bright. And I found more often than not, I wasn't using this. I was pulling out my phone and using the Google Maps to find my way around. So I knew I needed a solution to help me with all of those different things. I had actually been looking at this particular product for a while now, and Carpuride reached out to me, I'm going to say 6 months ago, to see if I would review this product if they sent one to me. Now, if you've watched my channel for any length of time, you know I don't really take too many donations to the channel unless I feel it is specifically related to what we talk about here, which is motorcycles, snowmobiling, or repair, so tools, things like that. So In the past, I have accepted some donations, such as flasher units for the turn signals on my DR, and maybe some headlight bulbs to test as well. But this is probably the most expensive piece of equipment anyone's ever donated to the channel that I've accepted. And the reason I accepted the donation really wasn't sort of their lobbying to me so much as my YouTube feed itself. What do I mean by my YouTube feed? Well, like a lot of people, and certainly content creators, I tend to watch a lot of YouTube. It's inspiring and it shows me different filming techniques. But most importantly is I find it entertaining, especially channels that are rooted in real world people. They're not overproduced and they really showcase a skill set or a hobby that I'm interested in. So some of the channels I watch would be things like Lexi and the Lonely Overlander, or Skidmate, or maybe Blondie Hacks, where she shows you how to machine super meticulous little parts for steam engines. I like channels like Carl Noseworthy out on the East Coast that makes knives, but was one of the first DR650 channels that I watched. And there's one person that I like to watch who's about my age, maybe a little bit older, and really does experience the off-road riding that I would love to be capable of, but my skill levels aren't there, and that's JR Depew Moto. Now, I've been watching JR for a while. I tend to comment quite a bit on his videos because I really like them, and recently he reviewed the Carpuride 702 Pro himself, and he really likes it. If you watch his videos, you're going to see that he rides a much more aggressive style than I do, even though modestly he says he's not riding nearly where he was 10 or 15 years ago. He still really is a capable rider. My feeling is, if this device can stand up to his type of riding, it is going to be more than capable for what I do with my DR650. So with that, let's take a look at what comes in the box because I haven't even opened it, and we'll start laying it out and get it installed on the bike. Now I will say today I'm going to show you how to hook it up on your DR650 sort of in the most simple method. And in the future I'm probably going to integrate it into the 3D printed dash, and if you like that then I'll put those prints out too, because I think I'm probably going to either put I don't know, an auxiliary rail up there or some kind of mount so I can mount it onto that dash. But that's enough about me babbling on. Let's take a look at what's in the box. Okay, so as I said, let's take a look what's in the box here. I haven't even opened it yet. The plastic's still on the box. No idea what's in there, but I'll use this razor knife. We'll open it up. Okay. As you can see here, it comes nicely packaged in foam to protect the device. And here is the device itself, and it's quite a substantial size. Let's take a look at this. Oh, there's some wiring that comes with it. We'll take a look at the rest of it in a second. This is a fairly sizable piece here, and I've got a tape measure. Let's take a look. It's supposed to be a 7-inch screen, so that's usually corner to corner. Let's take a look. It's actually closer to 7 3/4 inches, or about 20 centimeters corner to corner. I'm wondering if it's 7 inches across. Yes, it's 7 inches across. So let's do some comparison while we're right here. This is my old Garmin Nuvi. This was actually pretty clear when I was using it. Let's take a look at the size comparison here. There you go. Substantially larger surface area. And now let's take a look at the Garmin Montana. So although the unit's pretty big, look at the size difference in the screen itself. This Carpuride should be really good. It looks like it comes mounted with a ram mount on the back stock, which is good. And it comes with a handlebar mount here, which is probably how most people will mount this. If you don't have a rally tower that allows you to mount it, this is probably how most people are going to mount it. And today, this is how we're going to use the Carpuride mount system to show you how you could mount it on your DR650. One thing that JR did mention was the Pro comes with a tower rail mount. And that's how he mounted his, and I think that's how I'm going to mount mine, is I will put a mount 3D printed onto my dash, and it'll allow us to use this device to get it working. It also comes with a couple different wiring options here, as you can see. So this is the primary wiring system, and it has a nice waterproof connection here to a wiring harness that we're going to run straight back to our battery. It has an inline fuse that is 3 amps, so it doesn't really draw a lot of power, which is really, really nice. I have a feeling that I'm going to eventually wire this directly into our dash and use the fuse panel that is going to be in that dash to run this. But for the average person, this is going to work really, really well. It also comes with an alternative hookup method, which is this nice USB-A cable, which we could use on my DR650 because I have USB power up at my dashboard. Now, if you have a motorcycle that has USB power already, this would be a good option for you to use. The nice thing is it also has that same waterproof connector that you just hook onto the pigtail for a nice clean installation. I really like that. Now here's a nice feature that is probably underrated. They give you a spare 3 amp fuse to carry with you. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a nice feature that they don't have to include, and yet they do. That's, to me, a sign of a good quality company. Now here is our hardware assortment. It looks like very nice cap head stainless screws. It has an Allen key, and in the box there's even a small wrench that allows you to tighten up these nuts here, these nylock nuts on the back of the mount. Now, this again, is it necessary? No. But what's nice about this is Carpuride gives you the tools you need to install this on your motorcycle, even if you don't have a shop like I have. So if you're a rider who doesn't do any wrenching at all, you can get up and running with this system without even having an adjustable wrench. Carpuride provides you with everything you need to mount this bike and get it rolling. I really like that. Lastly, they give you an instruction manual here on how to install it. It has nice color photos, the table of contents looks really good, and it gives you the different options on how to wire this up onto your motorcycle to make it function the way in which they intend it. So we're going to go through this, and we're going to go get it mounted on the motorcycle. All right, let's get going. The first place that I'm going to start is to determine where I want to mount this system. There's a lot of different options. You can mount it off to the left or to the right. The nice thing about the Carpuride is it is IP67 certified, meaning it's completely waterproof. You can ride with this in the rain or the snow without any issues. That's what they advertise. So it's not a real concern for me to necessarily have it behind my windscreen, but to me that still makes the most sense. So I'm going to mount it here in the center of my bars, and I hope I can get it positioned in such a way that I can still get to the key, see the turn signals, and my speedometer. If I can't, it's not a huge issue for me at this point, because eventually I'm going to mount it up here on my 3D printed dash and tuck it right up tight so it looks like a factory install. But that's just because I have the option to do it. For you, you're going to have to use this mount or the bar mount to figure out where this system is going to be best suited for your installation. So for this, I'm going to use my little tiny 1/4-inch drive socket, and I'll take these off. These are 10mm nuts, nylock nuts that come with it. They look, again, like stainless. I'm going to take off the spacers and the washers that are included with it. And like always, I ended up dropping a washer, but I see it. It does have these nice clamps here that should grip the bar well. They do look like they're for smaller bars, but I think they're going to work okay on this fat bar. And yeah, it does look pretty good. Now I have a safari tank on here, and that safari tank does stick out quite a ways in comparison to the factory tank you would get on a DR650. But I want to mount this up and make sure, whether it's the factory tank or the safari tank or IPS tank, whatever, that there's clearance when you turn the bars. This is not going to hit and scratch the tank. Because I've got a fat bar here, I'm not going to need the spacers, so I'm just going to put the washers on. And these nylon nuts, or sorry, these nylock nuts, not nylon nuts. They have nylon inserts in them. There we go. And this last wash, or this last nut here. There we go. I think that's what I'm going to do though, is I'm going to reverse it here. Just give me a second. All right, there we go. It looks like that's going to clear everything. I got this little tiny ratchet that should work well. In fact, I'm going to tighten these up a little bit here, just to take some of the slack out. Then I'll rotate it into position. Why don't we actually use the little one that came with it? I kind of like that idea. Now, although this isn't a snap-on quality wrench, it does the job. You can see that it is going to get in there and allow you to tighten everything up. Now I'm going to mount the system up here and see how it fits and whether or not where I placed it originally is a good spot or not. When you are mounting this, you need to think of how you're going to route this cable either back to your battery, or if you're using the USB plug, back to wherever your USB source is. There's a fair amount of cable here. I would say there's probably over 1 meter when you really stretch it out. So it should give you enough to get just about anywhere you want. The one thing that I would criticize them about though, is the fact that even though they give you the wrenches and tools to mount this, the power ends here don't have any kind of ring clips on them at all. Which means you're going to have to somehow figure out how you're going to wire this into your battery. For me, that's not a problem. I'll put some ring clips on these and be able to mount it up without any problems. If you don't have access to that, maybe you have a friend that can put some of these on, or you probably could take this over to a local machine shop or mechanic or something like that and see if they could crimp those connectors on for you. They usually have those types of things there as shop supplies. It may cost you $10 or $12 or $15. Sometimes if you bring them some coffee or donuts, maybe they'll put those rings on for you for nothing. But Carpuride, you need to look at this and figure out a solution. And I can already see this wouldn't work for a permanent solution for me because it hides both my speedometer, my ignition key, and my turn signals. I think I'm going to move this over to the side. But just initial feelings is this feels pretty secure mounted on the bar like this. But give me a minute and I'm going to move it over to the left just so that I can see other things on the bike. Well, that actually is a little bit better. I have it placed off to the left-hand side. I can now see everything. Of course, the wiring still needs to be hooked up, but it's placed really well. And there's one thing that I noticed that, again, I think speaks to Carpuride's commitment to motorcycle-specific or power sport-specific hardware. The fact that the power button is on the left-hand side of the unit means that you can turn it on or off while you've got your hand on the throttle. That is just a little bit of design philosophy that I like. You can push that on or off and you know, do all of the navigation with your left hand while still having the throttle on. So owning a DR650, many of you may know, sometimes in the morning these things can be a little bit cantankerous. You may need to hold the throttle open a little bit to keep it from stalling. And this gives you the opportunity to turn the unit on if it's directly wired to your battery without having to do one of these maneuvers. That is a nice touch. Okay, I like that position. The next thing you're going to have to do is route this cable back to your battery. In the case of the DR650, that's under the seat. So let's get that off and have a look at what we have to do. To get to the battery, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the seat and the side covers off the DR650. That's pretty easy to do. You'll need a JIS screwdriver to get the side panels off and then a 12mm socket to get your seat off. Let's start with that right now. Next, I'm going to have to do something that I don't really like doing, but I'm going to have to make this work, and that is take off my tank. A stock DR650 is really quite easy to take the tank off. You only have to remove the hose from the petcock, and when you do that, you want to leave the petcock in the on position. You don't want to have it in the PRI, which is your prime position. I've made that mistake before, and early in this YouTube channel, I think I actually suggested you leave it on the PRI stupidly. The stock DR650 tank uses a vacuum petcock, so when the engine is off, the petcock closes and allows you to remove the fuel line. As you pull the tank off, you're also going to see a secondary line on the bottom of that petcock, which is your vacuum line. You need to remove both that and the fuel line. Remove the two bolts at the very back of the tank, and then the tank slides off. The Safari tank is a little bit more complex in the fact it has a support that runs across. It has a pair of petcocks on it, and quite frankly, it's much heavier because I just filled it with fuel not too long ago, so I've got 30 liters of fuel in here. Taking this tank off is a little bit of a pain in the arse, but in order to route the cable safely back to the battery, I have to do that. So I'm gonna go ahead and do it here and now. Now that the tank's off, we can take this cable here and route it cleanly down along the spine of the bike over to the battery. When you do this, you want to bring the cable close to the head tube of the motorcycle before you start going down towards the battery. And you want to make sure that before you finalize everything and put the tank on, that as you turn the bars, this cable isn't getting pulled in some direction you don't want it to. It needs to have a little bit of mobility. So let's go ahead and zip tie this down and get it into place, at least temporarily until I mount it on the dash so that we can hook it up to the battery. But before we do that, I want to put some ends on those cables like we talked about. To do that, we're going to do that over at the other bench over here, and we'll get that working. Or maybe I'll do it up where the sunlight is. Anyway, let's get some ends put on these cables. For this application, I'm going to use these little forks here. I've got two of them, and there's a couple reasons. I would love to use a ring connector. That's probably the better unit to use, but I don't have a ring connector the right size to fit on the battery stud in a red connector, which is designed for 22 gauge to 18 gauge, which this is extremely fine. It's gotta be this small to fit in there. I only have them in blue, which is 16 to 14 gauge wire. It's just too big of a connector to comfortably fit on this gauge of wire. And you're only using this type of wire because it draws 3 amps, very, very little. Again, this is an area Carpuride could improve by including ring connectors on these from the factory. They have everything you need there other than this to hook it up to the battery. And most people have a 10mm wrench and an Allen key, but very few people have the right tools or equipment to strip and join all of this stuff up to get it to hook up to your battery. So Carpuride, I would hope you could watch this and say that's an improvement we could make. However, these will work quite well, and in some ways it's even better because you don't have to take the stud right out of the battery. You just have to loosen it enough to slide this fitting in and give conductivity. So let's see if we can do this. We're going to start by stripping this wire, and I have one of these fancy wire strippers here. I hope it'll go down small enough, and it does, which gives us a nice piece of wire. And the wire appears to be copper. It's not aluminum. That's a really good thing to know. And it's tinned on the end to keep the wire together. So after I strip it, I am going to insert it into here. It's going to poke out a little bit, and then I am just going to use my crimpers here to set this wire, and hopefully that'll perform. Yeah, that's nice and tight on there. I'll do the same with the ground wire. So I'll strip this off. There we go. I'll fit this on. Put it into the crimper. And these are, you don't need these fancy crimpers. You can get by with just a standard crimper like this if you have to, if you want to go out and buy a kit that comes with some connectors and stuff. But these die style crimpers do a really nice job, and I happen to have one, so that's what I'm going to use. Okay, now we can route our cable and get it over the battery. The nice thing about this is, I'm going to show you here before we go, is take a look at the wire. I didn't actually have to take the head unit off. I was able to just disconnect it from this waterproof connector, and this waterproof connector has a key on it, so you can only put it in one way. It's indexed so that you get it put together right. And if you do ever take it off, it comes with a protective cap to keep those connections clean. Good work, Carpuride. If I was going to permanently mount this in this location the way that I have it, I would take this frame mount off here and run it in behind along with the other cables for your throttle. But because eventually I'm going to hardwire this into my 3D dash, I'm simply going to run it alongside these cables nice and tight over to here and out to the battery. To do this, we're again going to use zip ties, and I'm just going to feed them through and leaving enough slack here again for this to pivot as the bars turn. I'm just going to tighten this up onto that one throttle cable here. Suzuki does use reusable zip ties, and many manufacturers do. You can basically just lift up on a little tab and open this up, and then slip your cable in and reattach it. These are a nice little option to have, and saves you a few cents every time and makes it quite reversible. Okay, we are just about up to the battery here, so let's change and have a look. For those of you that have never had your DR650 seat off and don't know where your battery is, it's located right here, just about underneath where you're sitting. It's held in place with this support bar that clamps directly to the frame using these two M6 bolts, which have a 10mm head on them. Now, I've already loosened these off to make it easier to get the bar off, but basically you remove those with a 10mm wrench or socket, and then your bar lifts right off. Underneath here, you're going to see your negative terminal and your positive terminal for the battery. You want to make sure that when you're working around your battery, you don't accidentally short it out. The way you avoid this is honestly to take off your negative battery cable before you start working on this. And the reason for that is if you remove the negative battery terminal, even if you arc across here from the frame to the positive lead, it doesn't have a ground path and it can't short out. Whereas if you touch your screwdriver from here to here from the negative terminal, well, it's just another ground path and it won't matter anyway. So the first thing I'm going to do, just for safety's sake, is take this particular stud right out. And to do that, I just need a screwdriver. Fit it in there and take this out. This is pretty common with most motorcycle batteries, that they allow you to use a Phillips or a JIS screwdriver to get in. If it doesn't have a Phillips head integrated into the stud or into the bolt, it's usually a 10mm bolt head. I'm going to set that aside and I'm just going to pull this out of the way. Now, even if I touch the positive to the frame, as you can see here, there's no sparks. If this was connected to that battery, we'd have a spark show right now. So now that we're safe, I'm going to take off this protective cover here, and I am just going to loosen this particular bolt. And now I am going to take the fused side of the cable running up to the 702. I'm just going to slip it in behind that tab there. And as you can see, I've got a couple other things that are currently on here. This is why ultimately I'll have this hooked up to my 3D dash. I don't like a lot of things directly onto my battery. However, I'm just going to slide that in and snug that back down. Next, I'm going to put my negative terminal back on and just finger tighten it or run it down a little bit with the screwdriver here. Just enough that I can then put in the negative spade here. And now I'll fully tighten it down. Once that's accomplished, it's just a matter of putting on the battery support again in a way that doesn't pinch any wires. Oops, I got to put that cover on. And mounting this back down with the bolts. You will have a little bit of extra material here. You can see that Carpuride provides to you. You're going to need to find a place to just tidily put that in with some zip ties and tuck it away under your seat in a manner that isn't going to rub and isn't going to wear through. I'm going to snug these down here and then we can take a look at the dash. Well, look at this. Even before I finished putting the zip ties and cutting the zip ties off and putting the tank back on, as soon as I hooked it up to battery power, this thing fired right up. And it's impressive already. I haven't even played with it yet, but the screen is super bright. Well, I've got the tank back on, I got the seat and side panels back on. That's basically just a reverse of the removal process. You should have no problems doing that at all, unless you own a safari tank. I love my safari tank. Getting this thing back on the bike is always challenging for me, but I managed to get it done, and it's for a good cause because we have what looks to be a really good navigation aid mounted on our bike. Why don't we take a quick look through this thing? I'll show you what the interface looks like. And then, yeah, we'll talk maybe a little bit about some of the benefits that this thing is going to offer us as riders. All right, let's take a look at this from my point of view. Okay, let's take a look at the interface on this thing. I want to let you know I have one of my studio lights pointed straight at this thing to help imitate the sunlight to see how this screen looks. Now again, we have it hardwired, so I'm just going to reach over here and I'm going to click it on and it'll fire right up. If it's wired into keyed power, my understanding is it'll just come on and turn off as you turn the key on and off. And I've even understood that it'll fire up with the last app that you had opened up. Now here is our interface. It's bright, it's large icons for fingered gloves. The nice thing I like about this is even with my studio light on there, this is still really visible. And if we click this icon here, you can see it has an auto dimming feature that you can turn on and off. So with my studio light, it's still only halfway bright. So you can grab that and slide it and brighten the screen up as much as you want, whenever you want, or you can hit the auto and it will automatically adjust the screen to what settings it feels are appropriate for the lighting conditions that we're in. That's kind of a nice feature. Up here, you can adjust the sound quality coming out to your earphones in your helmet. So again, this is more than just a navigation system. This connects directly to a smart helmet or an intercom system that you have on an existing helmet and will broadcast things like turn-by-turn navigation through your Google Maps, or it'll play sound if you have a playlist in your phone, and it has the ability to communicate with a passenger through an intercom system, which is really, really handy. Now you can see the Bluetooth here is turned off because I have not synced my phone and I have a smart helmet on the way, so I can maximize the use of this thing. That's pretty cool. Here, there's a little switch here that turns it loud, turns it soft, so it helps to adjust to your hearing levels. Look at this. If you're playing classical music or if you're playing rock music, it has presets. There's jazz. Let's see what else we have. Electric. All kinds of different sound profiles for your listening pleasure. I think that's really great. And then we just click here and we get back to the main screen. Under the setting options, you can see here that we can restore our settings. We have language, we have our Bluetooth. So it's going to be as easy as just turning on the discoverables, which is there, and it shows you what items are paired to the unit. I like this a lot already. Now, there are a few things that are really nice about this, even without hooking it up to your phone, and that's this little button here. This gives you a digital compass, gives you an inclinometer here, and I believe this might even be your altitude. I'm not sure what that is. Look at that. So I'm 279 meters above sea level. For a DR650 owner, that's nice to know because some people really like to jet and tune their motorcycles based on their current altitude. So this is really nice to be able to do that. And this must be barometer, kilopascals maybe? I'm not sure. I got to look that up. Oh, there's our bar pressure. So there's 14. Oh, wow, that's pretty neat. Let's click this again. So we can go between miles or feet. So I'm 974 feet above sea level. That's a really slick feature. I really like that. Wow, that's pretty cool. And again, having a compass, I like riding with a compass. It's just a handy feature. This is pretty cool. So like I say, in my next video, I'll go through after I link all of this and we'll give it a good shakedown run. I'm quite excited, especially about this right here. Android Auto. That is going to link my Google Maps to it, and I understand you can load Gaia on here as well for your off-road routes. This is going to be a game changer. You know, the DR650 isn't really known as much of a high-tech motorcycle. Realistically, there's a speedometer and a turn signal light. That's pretty much the most high-tech component of this motorcycle. Until now. I want to thank Carpuride for providing me with one of these to install and test on the DR650. For me, this looks like a really good piece of kit, and it's going to solve the problems I'm looking for with my navigation. The nice thing is, well, my phone's going to link up to this as well, so I'll be able to take phone calls, get turn-to-turn navigation through Google Maps or Gaia. I have a compass. I also have the ability to communicate with a fellow rider through the Bluetooth links between the two helmets. That's going to be really good for me. Overall, the build quality on this looks really robust, and you can really see that it's engineered right from the start for motorcycle riders. Things like the IP67 rating, the fact that the controls are on the left side so you don't have to take your hand off the throttle to manipulate it. The mount itself is good and solid, and the fact that it is so simple to install that you don't even need to have any wrenches. The only improvement I could suggest to them from an installation standpoint is to put a couple battery rings on the end of the wiring harness, and that would be fantastic. So Carpuride, if you're listening, that would be a change I would make. Now, if you're interested in purchasing one of these, Carpuride's provided me with an incentive code that is going to give you 30% off of your purchase if you use it, and that's going to be down in the link below. They're also going to give me a small commission if you do buy one, which is going to help the channel to grow and buy other things to show you here on Dino's Tinker Shed. So thank you very much, Carpuride, for that as well. So until the next time, I'm going to get to work on syncing this up to my phone and seeing how it works, play with it. But I really hope you have time to get out and do some riding, or maybe a little bit of wrenching in your shed. And until the next time, remember, tinker easy. I'll see you soon. This thing's pretty cool.